It started as most things do, with a quiet hum of ambition, a persistent whisper of more, always more, echoing in the polished halls of the tech company where I'd spent nearly 2 decades of my life, the air thick with the scent of ambition and stale coffee from the communal machine, a place where innovation was celebrated but often overshadowed by the relentless pursuit of bigger numbers and faster growth. And I was good at it, very good, the kind of good that brought a substantial income. A comfortable life for my wife and me, and the distinct feeling of being on top of the world, like I held the keys to some secret garden of prosperity. We had the house sprawling and sun-drenched, a testament to what my consistent performance on the stock market and shrewd investments had built, bought with a mortgage that felt like a badge of honor back then, proof of our stability, even with the ever-present low-level drone of student loan debt from my university days still quietly chipping away at our monthly budget, a relic from a different era, but one I always believed I'd pay off early thanks to my growing passive income streams. The house itself was more than just shelter. It was a statement, a solid, tangible representation of every late night spent hunched over financial reports, every calculated risk taken, every market trend successfully anticipated, its grand, welcoming facade concealing the subtle anxieties that sometimes simmered beneath the surface, anxieties I diligently ignored, dismissing them as the natural jitters of a man at the peak of his career, pushing for even greater financial heights. The polished hardwood floors gleamed under the afternoon sun, reflecting the carefully chosen artwork on the walls, each piece a subtle nod to our refined tastes, or at least what we perceived as refined tastes, reflecting the image we wanted to project to our friends and colleagues, a silent declaration of our success, a life lived without want, always striving for more, always reaching for the next level of comfort and security. I remember the satisfying weight of the brass doorknob in my hand each evening, the soft sigh of the expensive central air conditioning system humming through the vents, keeping the temperature perfectly regulated, a luxury I took for granted, just another invisible layer of comfort in our meticulously curated existence. The kitchen, a chef's dream with its gleaming stainless steel appliances and enormous marble island, was rarely used for elaborate meals, more often a stage for quick breakfasts or a place to sort through mail, its pristine surfaces an unspoken promise of future dinner parties that often never materialized, leaving a lingering sense of unfulfilled potential, a silent accusation in its sterile perfection. The sprawling back garden, a verdant canvas of manicured lawns and exotic flora, required an army of gardeners and a significant portion of our income to maintain its pristine condition, a constant, low-level drain on our resources that I justified as an investment in our quality of life, a necessary expense for the beautiful view from our master bedroom, a view that often went unnoticed as I scrolled through market data on my tablet late into the night. My portfolio was diversified, not just traditional stocks, but also significant stakes in a few promising startups that promised exponential returns. And of course, like so many others who saw the gleaming future, a considerable portion of my liquid assets had migrated into cryptocurrencies, specifically Bitcoin, which at one point seemed like an unstoppable rocket to financial freedom, an almost magical solution to generating wealth that outpaced anything the old guard could offer. And I felt invincible, confident in my risk management strategies, believing I had an innate understanding of the market's pulse, a Midas touch for investments. The thrill of watching my Bitcoin holdings surge on the screen was intoxicating, a digital high that overshadowed the steady, less dramatic gains from my more conventional investments, feeding a dangerous sense of infallibility, a belief that I had truly cracked the code of wealth creation, a modern alchemist transmuting pixels into prosperity. I recall the specific, almost metallic tang of the air in my dedicated home office, a space designed for focus and control, where the soft glow of multiple monitors illuminated my face as I tracked every minute fluctuation, every whispered rumor, every market sentiment, convinced that total information mastery was the key to infinite returns, a shield against any unforeseen downturn. The weekends were filled with barbecues with my friends, most of whom were also in tech, and our conversations invariably drifted to market trends, the latest unicorn valuations, and subtle boasts about our latest income boosts, sometimes tinged with that almost imperceptible professional jealousy that can poison even the strongest friendships, a quiet competition to see who was climbing higher, faster. An unspoken financial comparison, always lurking beneath the surface of shared laughter and clinking glasses of craft beer, creating a subtle pressure to always be seen as thriving, to never show a crack in the gilded facade. The clinking of ice in our glasses, the sizzle of expensive cuts of meat on the grill, the low murmur of our wives' conversations blending with the distant laughter of children playing in a neighbor's yard. All these sounds formed the soundtrack to a life I believed was perfectly orchestrated, perfectly safe, utterly impenetrable. I often found myself scrolling through various financial news feeds late into the night, the blue light of the screen reflecting in my tired eyes, fueled by lukewarm coffee from an empty cup on my desk, chasing the next big thing, convinced that every hour spent researching was another brick in the wall of our future financial security, another layer of insurance against any possible downturn, a fortress against the unknown. The quiet hum of the server in the corner of my office, a constant, almost therapeutic drone, became synonymous with progress, with growth, with the relentless march towards ultimate financial liberation. My wife occasionally voiced a quiet concern about the long hours, the constant hum of my phone with market alerts, the way my eyes seemed perpetually drawn to the glowing screen, even during what should have been moments of shared quiet, but I always brushed it off, assuring her that this was how empires were built, how we would guarantee a comfortable retirement, how our children, should we choose to have them, would never want for anything, a vision of effortless prosperity that now feels like a cruel mirage. Her gentle hand on my arm, the soft query in her voice, barely registered as I mentally charted the latest upward trend, my mind already racing ahead, already calculating the next move, dismissing her subtle plea for connection as an understandable but ultimately secondary concern, an understandable distraction from the grander project of our financial destiny. The quiet anxiety of being house poor was a concept I'd scoffed at in those days, convinced that our rising income would always outpace our mortgage payments and property taxes. But even then, a small, persistent voice in the back of my mind wondered if we'd overextended ourselves just a little with that grand, unused dining room and the sprawling back garden that required constant, expensive maintenance, a faint shadow across the sun-drenched living room, a fleeting chill despite the warmth. A whisper of unease that I skillfully suppressed, choosing instead to focus on the glittering promises of the digital age, the undeniable allure of exponential growth, believing my financial foresight was truly impeccable, an unshakable pillar upon which our future would stand. The faint, sweet scent of the gardenias outside, usually a calming presence, sometimes felt cloying, almost suffocating, when that tiny voice of doubt dared to surface, reminding me of the sheer scale of the upkeep, the endless cycle of watering, trimming, weeding, an endless expenditure for something that I barely had time to truly enjoy. Then the first tremor, not a market crash, not a layoff, but a whisper from within my own body. A persistent ache, a dull throb that graduated to a sharp, unexpected pain one Tuesday morning as I was preparing for a conference call, the kind of pain that made the world narrow to a pinpoint of agony, a sudden, blinding flash that stole my breath and clarity, replacing the familiar office hum with a ringing silence in my ears, a profound sense of my own physical vulnerability, utterly eclipsing the abstract worries of market fluctuations. The crisp, clean lines of the presentation on my screen blurred, the familiar comfort of my ergonomic chair suddenly felt alien, the carefully arranged documents on my desk seemed to mock my sudden incapacity. The emergency room visit was a blur of fluorescent lights, cold hands, and hushed medical jargon, a disorienting journey through corridors that smelled faintly of antiseptic and despair, a stark contrast to the controlled environment of my tech campus. The relentless beeping of machines, the low murmurs of hurried conversations, the occasional muffled cry from a distant room, all converged into a chaotic symphony of alarm that jarred my senses, leaving me feeling exposed and utterly powerless. The diagnosis, when it finally came, felt like a thunderclap in a clear sky, a severe, unexpected illness requiring immediate and extensive treatment, months of recovery, a complete halt to my high-paced life, shattering the illusion of my physical invincibility, a cruel joke played by my own biology. The initial shock quickly gave way to a chilling realization of fragility, both physical and financial, as the gravity of the situation began to settle, seeping into every pore of my being, making my carefully constructed world feel like a house of cards buffeted by an unseen storm. The fear was primal, a cold knot in my stomach that tightened with every whispered prognosis, every uncertain glance from a medical professional. The bills started arriving almost immediately, thick envelopes of glossy paper detailing procedures, medications, consultations, each one a fresh stab of fear, each official-looking logo on the envelope a harbinger of more crushing figures, a relentless barrage of financial assaults that piled up on the pristine marble counter in the kitchen, a stark, unwelcome counterpoint to the quiet ambition that once filled those rooms. Even with what I thought was excellent insurance coverage through my long-term tech job, the deductibles, copays, and out-of-network charges quickly swelled into a crushing weight of medical debt. Thousands upon thousands, far more than I had ever anticipated, far more than my secure savings could absorb without a significant dent, turning my fortress into a sieve, revealing the gaping holes in my supposedly impenetrable financial planning, a bitter irony that twisted my gut. I remembered the meticulous spreadsheets I once kept, tracking every investment, every projected gain, every contingency, and now those precise calculations felt like a childish game in the face of this unpredictable, devastating reality. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, the early morning chill seeping through the old window panes, tracing the ornate fonts on a particularly hefty statement, the paper cool beneath my fingertips, feeling the weight of it, the cold dread creeping up my spine, a feeling I hadn't known since my lean student days, a time when ramen noodles were a luxury and every dollar was stretched to its absolute limit, a haunting echo from a past I thought I had long since escaped. The faint, sweet smell of last night's forgotten fruit bowl felt out of place, almost offensive, against the backdrop of such stark financial terror, a poignant reminder of a normalcy that felt impossibly distant. The ripple effect was swift and merciless. My recovery was slow, punctuated by fatigue and a constant mental fog, making it impossible to keep up with the demands of my job. The simple act of reading a document, once second nature, became an arduous task, my concentration fractured, my thoughts drifting like smoke. The sterile white walls of my bedroom, once a sanctuary, now felt like the confines of a prison, each day blurring into the next, marked only by the arrival of the nurse and the bitter taste of prescribed medications. The tech company, once so eager for my contributions, had little patience for extended absences, especially in a rapidly shifting market. I could feel the subtle shift in their communications, the politeness thinning, replaced by a colder, more transactional tone, the unspoken understanding that I was becoming a liability, a slowing cog in their fast-moving machine. The emails from my project lead became less frequent, then stopped entirely, leaving a gaping void where once there was a constant stream of urgent directives and collaborative updates. The email came on a quiet afternoon, a coldly worded message about restructuring and downsizing, delivered with the impersonal efficiency of a digital guillotine. I was laid off. 2 decades of loyalty, gone with a click, a single decisive stroke of a virtual pen, erasing years of dedication, innovation, and countless hours poured into building their success, leaving me with nothing but a polite but firm severance package that felt like a meager consolation prize for a lifetime of commitment. The emotional toll was immense, a deep wound to my identity and my sense of purpose, not just the loss of my substantial income, but the feeling of being discarded, irrelevant, like a broken tool left to rust. The sudden, deafening silence of my phone, once a constant source of alerts and calls, now a stark reminder of my professional obsolescence. It was like the floor had simply dropped out from under me, leaving me suspended in a terrifying void, the comforting hum of my old professional life abruptly replaced by a chilling stillness. The clean, sterile lines of the office building, the scent of expensive cleaning products and fresh coffee that used to greet me each morning, now felt like distant, unattainable memories, replaced by the lingering smell of stale air and my own fear within the walls of our beautiful but now suffocating home. Simultaneously, the startups I had so enthusiastically invested in began to falter, their valuations crumbling under market pressures and poor management, eventually leading to the complete collapse of one of the most promising ventures, erasing a significant chunk of my capital, a painful betrayal of trust in the founders I had championed, founders who had once spoken with such compelling vision, their words now echoing as hollow promises. Their confident projections melting away like snow in the sun. The news reports detailing their spectacular failures, once subjects of detached analytical interest, now felt like deeply personal attacks, each headline a fresh bruise on my already battered financial psyche, a bitter pill to swallow as I watched my future evaporate before my eyes. And then the cryptocurrencies, what was once a source of pride, a symbol of my financial foresight, became a gaping wound. The market shifted dramatically, the bubble burst, and my Bitcoin and other digital assets plummeted in value, wiping out not just potential passive income, but a substantial portion of my savings, the screen glowing mockingly with red numbers in the quiet dark of my office, each pixelated drop in value a visceral punch to the gut, a confirmation of my catastrophic misjudgment. The cold light of the monitor illuminated my despair, reflecting the hollow gaze in my eyes as I stared at the digital abyss, the dizzying speed of the losses leaving me breathless, paralyzed by a mixture of shock and utter disbelief, the very technology I had embraced as a savior now acting as my executioner. I had kept many of these risky investments and their subsequent failures a secret from my wife, believing I could always recover, always course correct, always shield her from the more volatile aspects of my financial strategies, a misguided attempt at protection that only served to build a wall of silent deception between us, a wall that was now crumbling around our ears. The layoff, the medical debt, and the sheer scale of the losses forced my hand. The reveal was brutal. The marital strain caused by my secret debt, the risky bets, and the subsequent financial freefall tore at the fabric of our relationship. Conversations became sharp, clipped, or dissolved into stony silence, the clink of cutlery against plates the only sound during dinner, a painfully audible echo in the cavernous dining room that once promised shared laughter and convivial feasts, now filled with unspoken accusations and a tangible sense of growing resentment. Her eyes, once full of admiration, now held a mixture of hurt and fear, a silent accusation that I couldn't bear, a mirror reflecting my own profound sense of failure, turning her familiar gaze into something alien, something that pierced through my defenses, leaving me exposed and ashamed. The beautiful house, once a source of pride, became a cage, each room echoing with unspoken resentments and the heavy burden of anxiety, its spaciousness now amplifying our distance, its expensive finishes feeling like a cruel mockery of our current predicament. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside the window seemed to carry the weight of our fractured reality, a constant, low-grade hum of impending doom. Divorce, a word I'd never imagined associated with us, hung in the air like a noxious gas, a constant, low-level threat that made my stomach clench, a concept that had once been a distant, abstract tragedy, now a terrifyingly real possibility, slowly but surely eating away at the foundations of our shared life. The comforting scent of her favorite perfume, once a constant presence, had faded, replaced by the faint, acrid smell of unspoken arguments and simmering tension, a clear indicator of the emotional wasteland we were rapidly becoming, a desert of shared experience where only resentment bloomed. As if the universe hadn't dealt enough blows, the broader economy seemed to conspire against us. The constant anxiety over soaring inflation became a daily reality. Trips to the supermarket, once a casual chore, became strategic missions, the menu of necessities now a cruel list of unaffordable luxuries, cheap coffee and ramen becoming staples, each item in the shopping cart a painful reminder of our shrinking budget, the once familiar aisles now a gauntlet of difficult choices, the bright fluorescent lights of the store highlighting the stark reality of our decline. I would spend what felt like hours meticulously comparing unit prices, calculating which brand offered the most caloric bang for the least financial buck, the cheerful jingle of the checkout scanner feeling like a tiny hammer chipping away at my last vestiges of dignity, the cold plastic of the credit card in my hand, a reminder of the debt that continued to accumulate even as our resources dwindled. High utility bills arrived with sickening regularity, the furnace kicking on felt less like comfort and more like a drain on our dwindling resources, the chill of morning air seeping through the window feeling sharper, colder, a reminder of the rising cost of merely existing, each gust of wind a whisper of impending financial doom, each click of the thermostat a jolt of anxiety. The hum of the refrigerator, once an unnoticed background noise, now felt like a costly luxury, its constant whirring a symbol of the electricity consumption we could barely afford. Our once manageable mortgage, already feeling like a trap, became an unbearable burden with rising interest rates, reinforcing the crushing feeling of being utterly house poor, a prisoner in our own home, unable to sell without a loss, unable to afford to stay, the very walls that had once offered comfort and security now looming like a colossal, inescapable monument to my financial failures. The heavy oak door, once a welcoming portal, now felt like a gate sealing me into a prison of my own making, and the burden didn't stop there. My aging parents, facing their own health issues and rising living costs, began to need more financial support, placing us firmly in the sandwich generation dilemma, squeezed between their needs and our own plummeting resources, the pressure almost unbearable, a relentless tightening of the vice from both ends, leaving me gasping for air, feeling utterly inadequate to meet the demands placed upon me, a profound sense of helplessness washing over me as I watched them struggle. Knowing I could no longer be their rock, their reliable source of assistance, The quiet, worried tremor in my mother's voice on the phone, the hesitant way my father described his latest medical expenses, each sound a fresh weight added to my already overloaded shoulders. My once close friends, those who had once shared investment tips and dreams of early retirement, slowly drifted away, unable to relate to my struggles, perhaps feeling uncomfortable with the financial comparison, or perhaps simply relieved it wasn't them, their professional jealousy giving way to a more benign but equally painful avoidance. The invitations to weekend barbecues ceased, the casual phone calls became fewer and further between, until eventually, the silence became absolute, a hollow echo where once there was camaraderie and shared ambition. The silence from them felt like a betrayal, a final, definitive severing of ties, leaving me isolated and alone in my deepening despair. I would occasionally see their perfectly curated social media posts, glimpses of their continuing successes, their exotic vacations, their new, even grander homes, and each image was a fresh stab of envy and profound loneliness, a stark contrast to my own rapidly deteriorating reality, a cruel mirror reflecting what I had lost. The relentless pressure, the arguments, the growing chasm between my wife and me eventually led to the inevitable. A divorce due to a family financial crisis, the shattering of a life we had meticulously built, leaving behind a landscape of broken promises and empty rooms, the sound of her car pulling out of the driveway for the last time echoing in the vast, empty space that was once our shared home, leaving me with an almost physical ache in my chest, a profound hollowness that permeated every fiber of my being. I remember the exact moment, standing by the large bay window in the living room, watching the tail lights of her car disappear down the tree-lined street, the gentle click of the automatic garage door closing behind her, a final, definitive period at the end of our story. The silence that followed was not just an absence of sound, but a crushing presence, a heavy blanket of loss that settled over the house, making the once familiar walls feel cold and indifferent. The scent of her shampoo, which sometimes lingered on her pillow, was gone, replaced by the faint metallic tang of loneliness, a bitter and persistent reminder of the life that had just driven away, leaving me to navigate the wreckage alone. Each object she had left behind, a forgotten scarf on the coat rack, a book on the bedside table, became a poignant relic, a painful whisper of a future that would never be, a constant torment in the desolate stillness of our once vibrant home. The cold, smooth surface of the dining table, where we had shared so many meals, now reflected only the dim, solitary light of my despair, each polished grain a silent witness to our unraveling, each unused chair a phantom presence. The culmination of it all was bankruptcy, a word that had once been an abstract concept from a textbook, now a harsh, humiliating reality. The piles of paperwork, overwhelming in their stark legal jargon, filled my tiny, rented apartment's kitchen table, each sheet a testament to a failed venture, a missed payment, a broken promise. The sterile offices of the lawyers, smelling faintly of old paper and hushed desperation, felt like a public confessional, the slow, agonizing dissection of every failed investment, every piece of credit I had maxed out, every debt I couldn't repay, each question from the stern-faced legal professionals a fresh incision into my already raw pride. It was a formal declaration of my utter failure, a public acknowledgement of the collapse of everything I thought I was, everything I had meticulously built and fiercely protected, now reduced to a series of cold, impersonal figures in a legal document. The shame was a heavy cloak, suffocating and omnipresent, clinging to me like a second skin, making it difficult to breathe, to think, to even exist without feeling its crushing weight, its bitter taste in the back of my throat. Every glance from a stranger, every sympathetic nod from a distant acquaintance, felt like a judgment, confirming my complete and total fall from grace. With my tech career obliterated and no savings left, a forced midlife career pivot became my only option. The job hunt was a brutal gauntlet of rejections, each form letter a new sting, each unanswered email a fresh blow to my already fragile self-esteem. My impressive resume, once a passport to opportunity, now felt like a historical artifact, a relic from a bygone era that held no relevance in my new, desperate reality. The skills I had painstakingly acquired, the nuanced understanding of complex systems, the ability to lead and innovate, all seemed utterly useless in the face of what was truly needed, a paycheck, any paycheck, to keep the lights on and food on the table. I took a job, any job, one far removed from the intellectual challenges and clean interfaces of my previous life. It was a manual labor position, physically demanding and soul-crushing, requiring me to wake before dawn, the chill of the morning air biting at my exposed skin, my hands, once nimble on a keyboard, now calloused and aching, the smell of damp earth and cheap coffee becoming my new norm, a stark sensory contrast to the polished surfaces and artisanal brews of my former corporate existence. The coarse texture of my new work gloves, stained with dirt and grease, felt alien, a painful reminder of how far I had fallen from the comfortable, climate-controlled environments I had once taken for granted. The pay was meager, a fraction of my former income, just enough to cover rent on a small, sparse apartment, the kind with thin walls where I could hear my neighbors' TV late into the night, the muffled thrum of bass from their music, the distant murmur of their conversations, a constant, unavoidable intrusion into my already limited personal space and basic necessities, leaving little room for anything else, certainly not for dreams of financial recovery. The tiny kitchen, barely big enough for one, held a single dented pot and a chipped ceramic mug, symbols of my drastically reduced circumstances. The instability of this career change was constant, a pervasive sense of being unmoored, adrift in a sea of uncertainty, every paycheck feeling like a temporary reprieve rather than a foundation, a fragile raft in a vast, unpredictable ocean. The future, once a meticulously planned roadmap of rising income and strategic investments, was now an opaque fog, a terrifying blank canvas where I could discern no discernible path forward. There were moments, dark, quiet moments, usually after a particularly exhausting shift, my muscles screaming in protest, my mind a jumble of regrets and what-ifs, staring at the empty cup on my table, the faint scent of cleaning products from the building's hallway clinging to the air, a chemical reminder of institutional sterility when I questioned everything, when despair threatened to swallow me whole, when the chill of morning air felt like a permanent resident in my bones. Chilling me to the core, a physical manifestation of my inner desolation, when the silence of the small apartment was not peaceful but deafening, echoing with all the things I had lost, with the ghostly laughter from barbecues long past, with the phantom scent of my wife's perfume, with the persistent hum of ambition that had led me to this precipice. The faded, peeling paint on the ceiling, the slight discoloration in the corner of the room where a leak had once been, these small imperfections became focal points for my endless rumination, each flaw a magnified representation of my own brokenness. There were times I considered moral compromises, small shortcuts, unethical opportunities that presented themselves in the desperation, the temptation of quick cash to alleviate the constant pressure, the gnawing anxiety that kept me awake at night, the insidious whisper of easy money, but something, some stubborn kernel of who I used to be, held me back, a quiet refusal to let the financial crisis strip away my integrity completely, to trade my soul for a few extra dollars. Clinging to that last shred of self-respect, a tiny, flickering flame in the encroaching darkness, a stubborn refusal to fully succumb to the moral decay that poverty often threatened to inflict. I remember one specific encounter in a dimly lit bar, a proposition whispered over the sticky counter, a way to move some undeclared goods for a significant cut. The stack of crisp bills flashed momentarily under the weak light, a stark, undeniable temptation, the scent of cheap beer and stale smoke filling the air, and for a fleeting moment I felt the pull, the sheer desperation for relief, but then a deeper, more profound revulsion surged through me. A primal need to retain some semblance of my former self, my internal compass, however damaged, still pointing towards a path of honesty, however difficult. The heavy, rough texture of the counter beneath my hand felt grounding, anchoring me back to a difficult but ultimately principled reality, a quiet, internal battle fought and won in the shadow of my crumbling world. But then slowly, almost imperceptibly, a shift began. It wasn't a grand revelation, more like the slow filtering of dawn through a dirty window, illuminating dusty corners one by one, a gradual, gentle awakening rather than an abrupt, blinding flash of insight. I started finding unexpected pockets of resilience. It began with the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other, day after day, through the grind of the new job, the repetitive motions of my manual tasks becoming a form of meditation, a way to quiet the incessant, self-recriminating chatter in my mind, the rhythmic clatter of machinery blending with the steady beat of my own heart, a slow, deliberate reclaiming of my physical self. I learned to budget with an almost obsessive focus, every single dollar accounted for, every expense scrutinized, finding a strange satisfaction in the meticulous planning, in making ends meet, however barely, a triumph of discipline over chaos, a small victory in the face of overwhelming odds. The cold, impersonal numbers on my ledger, once a source of dread, now became a tool, a means of regaining control, each balanced entry a small affirmation of my burgeoning strength. The crushing weight of debt was still there, a constant companion, a shadow that stretched long behind me, but it no longer felt like an immediate, suffocating threat, more like a distant, persistent hum, a challenge to be slowly chipped away at rather than an insurmountable mountain. I started to see the small joys, the tiny, often overlooked moments of grace that had always existed but had been obscured by my relentless pursuit of grandeur. The warmth of a cup of inexpensive tea on a cold morning, the bitter steam rising to warm my face, its earthy scent a simple, grounding comfort, the ceramic mug fitting perfectly into the curve of my palm, a simple, tactile pleasure that somehow bypassed the complex layers of my past aspirations. The satisfying crunch of an apple bought from the discount bin, its skin a little bruised but its flesh sweet and crisp, a testament to resilience, a reminder that beauty and value could still be found in imperfection. The quiet comfort of a worn sweater, the texture of its familiar wool against my skin, softened by countless washes, holding the faint, comforting scent of home, a tangible embrace in the chill of my sparse apartment. The faded pattern on my second-hand armchair in my tiny living room became a comforting sight, not a reminder of what was lost, but a symbol of a new, simpler life, a quiet acceptance of my new reality, its faded upholstery and slightly creaky springs now imbued with a gentle, unpretentious charm. I found moments of support from unexpected places, a kind word from a new colleague who didn't know my past, a shared laugh over a spilled coffee during a break, a simple gesture of human connection that felt profoundly healing, devoid of any pretense or judgment, a lifeline thrown to me in my isolation. The rough, calloused hand of my colleague clasping my shoulder after a particularly tough shift, a silent acknowledgement of shared labor and unspoken burdens, a connection forged in the crucible of hard work that felt more genuine than any networking event. A friendly nod from the owner of the small grocery store near my building who saw me struggling and sometimes offered a small discount on vegetables past their prime, their faded green leaves and soft spots telling a story of their own, making them feel more real, more accessible, a quiet act of generosity that chipped away at the shame I carried, a connection formed out of shared human experience, devoid of financial comparison or professional jealousy. The gentle clatter of the old cash register, the comforting smell of fresh bread and ripe produce, these sensory details wove a new tapestry of daily life, richer in its simplicity than the sterile perfection of my past. I started volunteering at a local community garden on my days off, getting my hands into the soil, feeling the cool earth beneath my fingers, the rich, loamy texture a primal connection to something ancient and enduring, the scent of damp soil and growing things a balm to my spirit, a gentle counterpoint to the chemical smells of my apartment building and the metallic tang of my work environment, finding a quiet, profound satisfaction in nurturing something, in contributing in the simple. Tangible act of creation, far removed from the abstract, volatile world of stocks and cryptocurrencies. The rhythm of digging, planting, watering, pruning became a form of therapy, each movement a deliberate step towards rebuilding not just the garden but myself. I learned the names of the plants, the subtle needs of each sprout, the patience required for growth, lessons that mirrored my own slow, arduous journey back to wholeness. The work, though demanding, had a certain purity to it, a direct correlation between effort and outcome that had been absent in my previous life of speculative finance, where success often felt like a roll of the dice, detached from tangible effort. The quiet sounds of the garden, the rustle of leaves, the hum of insects, the distant chirping of birds, were a welcome contrast to the incessant mental noise that had plagued me for so long, a gentle symphony of life that soothed my frayed nerves. The warmth of the sun on my face, the subtle coolness of a breeze rustling through the leaves, these elemental sensations reconnected me to a world beyond the confines of my own mind, beyond the specter of debt and loss. I would often sit on a rough-hewn wooden bench at the edge of the garden, watching the last rays of sunlight fade, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, feeling a quiet sense of peace descend upon me, a feeling I hadn't known in years, a profound gratitude for the simple beauty of the natural world, for the quiet satisfaction of a day spent in honest labor, for the enduring resilience of life itself, reflected in every vibrant green leaf, every budding flower, a constant, gentle reminder of hope and renewal. The earthy scent of the soil, mingled with the sweet fragrance of blooming flowers, filled my lungs, a refreshing antidote to the stale air of my past anxieties. The rhythmic drip of the watering can, the soft rustle of wind through the cornstalks, these simple sounds became my new, cherished soundtrack, far more resonant than the market alerts and financial news updates that once dominated my attention. I began to understand that true wealth wasn't measured in digits on a screen or square footage of a house, but in the richness of internal experience, in the quiet dignity of contributing, in the profound connection to the elemental rhythms of life. My hands, once pampered and accustomed to the soft click of a keyboard, now bore the marks of honest labor, the calluses a badge of honor, a tangible record of my hard-won journey back to myself. There was a quiet strength in these newfound calluses, a physical manifestation of the inner resilience I was cultivating, a strength that felt far more real and enduring than the fleeting power derived from financial speculation. I started taking long walks through the city parks on my off days, the crisp air filling my lungs, the sounds of distant traffic fading into the background as I focused on the rustle of leaves underfoot, the rhythmic swing of my arms, the steady beat of my heart, each step a testament to my physical recovery and a gentle reaffirmation of my existence. The vibrant green of the grass, the rough texture of the tree bark, the delicate scent of blooming flowers in spring, all these sensory details anchored me in the present, pulling me away from the endless rehashing of past mistakes and the anxious projections of an uncertain future. I even started sketching in a small notebook I carried crude drawings of the plants in the garden, the intricate patterns of leaves, the way light fell on a simple stone, a rediscovery of a forgotten creative spark, a quiet act of self-expression that offered a profound sense of release and focus, a counterpoint to the purely analytical demands of my previous life. The rough grain of the paper under my pencil, the faint earthy smell of the graphite, these small, tangible interactions brought a quiet joy that had been missing for so long, a gentle reawakening of my soul. I even started to share simple, unpretentious meals with some of my new colleagues after work, the camaraderie around a worn laminate table, the clinking of cheap silverware, and the shared stories of daily struggles and small triumphs feeling more authentic, more nourishing than any grand dinner party from my past. The genuine laughter, the shared silences, the uncomplicated human connection, these were the true riches, far surpassing any investment return I had ever chased. I still carry the scars of what happened, a gentle bittersweetness for the life I once knew, for the dreams that shattered. The memory of the expansive house, the luxury of abundant income, the perceived security of my investments, still lingers like a phantom limb, an echo of a self that no longer exists, a quiet, wistful ache that occasionally surfaces in moments of reflection, especially when the scent of expensive coffee or a glimpse of a luxury car triggers a fleeting memory of that past existence. But the frantic chase for more, the endless pursuit of wealth and status, has faded, replaced by a deeper, more profound contentment with what I have, a quiet acceptance of life's unpredictable currents, a hard-won peace that settled within me like dust after a storm. My body, though no longer as resilient as it once was, has healed, its aches and pains now a familiar part of its story, not a sign of impending doom, but a testament to its enduring capacity for recovery, a quiet strength found in its limitations. My bank account is modest, but it is mine, built on honest work and careful planning, not on speculative risks, a small but solid foundation that feels more secure than any colossal, high-risk portfolio ever did. The quiet anxiety of being house poor has been replaced by the quiet freedom of having less to lose, of finding solace in simplicity, in the humble warmth of my small apartment, the sturdy construction of its thin walls, the gentle flicker of a single lamp, each element a part of my new, unvarnished reality, a reality that, surprisingly, offered a profound sense of liberation. I've learned that resilience wasn't found in a grand comeback, not in the triumphant narrative of immediate financial recovery, but in the small, everyday acts of survival, in the quiet strength of putting one foot in front of the other, through the mundane and the challenging, in finding purpose beyond a paycheck, beyond the ephemeral allure of market gains. The chill of the morning air no longer fills me with dread, but with a sense of quiet presence, a reminder that each day is a new beginning, a fresh canvas, a new opportunity to experience the simple, unfiltered reality of existence, the crispness of the air, a bracing reminder of life's constant renewal. The silence of my small home, once deafening, is now a peaceful canvas for my thoughts, a space for quiet reflection, for internal monologues that are no longer dominated by fear and regret, but by a gentle contemplation of the present moment, a soft hum of contentment. I often find myself watching the dust motes dance in the sliver of sunlight that penetrates my window, mesmerized by their slow, ethereal movement, finding a quiet beauty in the mundane details of my existence. I learned to survive, and in doing so, I learned to truly live, to appreciate the warmth of a simple mug in my hands, the steady beat of my own heart, the quiet dignity of a life rebuilt from the ground up, brick by painstaking brick, finding a deeper, more sustainable kind of wealth in unexpected places. A wealth of spirit that no market crash could ever diminish, a resilience that felt like an unbreakable core, forged in the fires of adversity, a quiet, profound victory. The scent of the inexpensive coffee brewing in my small kitchen, the comforting weight of a well-worn book in my hands, the soft glow of the lamplight on the pages, these small, tangible pleasures now fill my life with a quiet richness, a far more enduring satisfaction than any fleeting financial triumph. The gentle creak of my floorboards underfoot, the distant sound of children playing in the park outside, these unadorned sounds now form the symphony of my contentment, a melody of gratitude for the profound peace I have found in having less, in being more. It's a different kind of ambition now, one focused inward, on nurturing the quiet growth of my own spirit, on cultivating a life rich in meaning rather than material excess, a gentle journey towards a future built on solid, self-discovered ground. Have you ever faced a moment where everything you thought was stable shattered, forcing you to redefine success? I'd truly value hearing your own experiences of navigating life's unexpected turns and finding your footing again in the comments below. If this story offered you a moment of quiet reflection, please consider giving it a like, sharing it with a friend who might need encouragement, and subscribing to join this community for more stories of resilience. And tell me what quiet joy brought a smile to your face today.